All right. Now, much is to be said. Of course, we know that that in the commandments that thou shalt have no other gods before me. We got the right off the get-go. Number one commandment, right? But that's both in a literal sense as well as another sense, because we'll get into a little bit of that here, but I want you to see what happens when we are before Him, and when we're before Him, what all happens. And then, of course, we'll make a couple applications to that as well. But the very first thing is that all things are exposed. Before God, all things are exposed. There's nothing that's hidden. There's nothing that will not be revealed. There's nothing that will not be coming into light and made manifest in the presence of God. So everything that comes before Him, they will be exposed because they'll be exposed for what they are because of His light. Remember, He is light. Right, in John chapter 12, verse 46, I am come a light into the world, that whosoever believeth on me should not abide in darkness. Okay, so they'll be exposed for who they are, for what they are, also for their intentions, because of His truth. So they'll be exposed for what they are because of His light. They're exposed for their intentions because of His truth. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 6 and 7, the Bible says, humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that He may exalt you in due time, casting all your care upon Him, for He careth for you. Of course, we love that verse because we use it a lot. We want to be able to cast our cares on the Lord because He cares for us. So that's a great thing. Also, all things are exposed, not only for what they are because of His light and for their intentions because of His truth, but for their results in your life because of His care for you. Okay? So the second thing that we're going to notice when we get before God is that all things become weak when they are before Him. Nothing can say, even right there in our text, it says, who can stand before His indignation? Who can abide in the fierceness of His anger? Everything, when you see people getting in front of God, you find them falling at their face with no strength and them laying as dead. Weak. They become weak. Okay? So strength is removed. Revelation chapter 1, verse 16 and 17 says, and He had in his right hand 7 stars, and out of His mouth went a sharp two-edged sword, and His countenance was as the sun shineth in His strength. And when I saw Him, I fell at His feet as dead. And He laid His right hand upon me, saying, fear not, I am the first and the last. And then we could talk about Daniel as well. In Daniel chapter 10, verses 2 through 10, it says this, in those days I, Daniel, was mourning 3 full weeks. I ate no pleasant bread, neither came flesh or wine in my mouth, neither did I anoint myself at all until all 3 whole weeks were fulfilled. And in the 24th day of the first month, as I was by the side of the great river, which is called Hiddekel, then I lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen, whose loins were girded with fine gold of Uphaz. His body also was like the beryl, and his face was the appearance of lightning, and his eyes as lamps of fire, and his arms and his feet like in color to polished brass, and the voice of his words like the voice of a multitude. And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision, for the men that were with me saw not the vision, but a great quaking fell upon them, so that they fled to hide themselves. I'm going to stop just for a second. Listen, when God shows Himself, even in that point, None of the guys that were with him saw the vision, but they felt it. They felt it. A great quaking fell upon them, and they weren't even the ones seeing it. Sometimes you might experience something, and you don't know why you're experiencing it, but it could be that God's speaking to somebody right next to you, showing them something, and something just gets a hold of you. I love that. In verse 8, therefore I was left alone and saw this great vision, and there remained no strength in me. For my comeliness was turned in me into corruption, and I retained no strength. Yet I heard the voice of his words, and when I heard the voice of his words, then was I in a deep sleep on my face, and my face toward the ground. And behold, an hand touched me, which set me upon my knees and upon the palms of my hands. The force of wind and wave are stilled. Grief, suffering, pain, and sadness are relieved. None can stand before him on their own. He gives them strength. He gives them strength to stand before him. He gives us strength to be able to do that. And even the power of death becomes easily overcome. And flames lose their power to burn. Lions lose their appetites and their strength. And even idols crash down before him. When I saw that, I thought, wow. When we look at Dagon in 1 Samuel chapter 5, verse 2 through 4, we find that was the god of the Philistines. And they had it in front of the ark of the covenant. So they literally had the false god standing before him. Thou shalt not have any other gods before me. And let's find out what happened. Most of you know it already. But when the Philistines took the ark of God, they brought it into the house of Dagon and set it by Dagon. And when they of Ashdod rose early on the morrow, behold, Dagon was fallen upon his face to the earth before the ark of the Lord. And they took Dagon and set him in his place again. They should have learned. Verse 4, and when they arose early on the morrow morning, behold, Dagon was fallen upon his face to the ground before the ark of the Lord, and the head of Dagon, and both of the palms of his hands were cut off upon the threshold. Only the stump of Dagon was left to him. No other gods before me means nothing else should have first place, but it also means that literally to have them before him. Think about that. They literally had a false god before the ark, and it fell down on its face. They didn't take the hint. God gave them the memo. They didn't decide to read. So they decide to take him and put him back in his place before the Ark of the Covenant. And then they wake up the next morning only to find Dagon had just been all busted up. He was again fallen down, and his palms and his head were cut off. Okay. I think we got the memo. Sometimes God just has to do a little bit of extra, because when you're extra, he's got to be extra to help you. Everything loses its grip on you but him. See, when we bring things before God, they don't have any ability to stand either. Like the worries and the stresses that you bring before him, they have no power. They have no power in the presence of God. Therefore, they have to lose their grip on you because they don't have strength to hold on to you. When you're in the presence of God, you can't bring that up to God and think it's going to hang on. And why do we have altars? Because we could come before him and it loses its grip. Take your burdens to the Lord and leave them there. Well, they're supposed to fall off when you get down before God. Because that's what it is. Nothing has the ability to hold on to you in the presence of God but God. So if we'll take that before Him, He'll drop it. It'll drop. You'll be able to walk away from it. Worries, fears, angers, wrath, anxiety cannot have strength when they are brought before Him. They must all face Him, and they all will fall like the walls of Jericho when they get before Him. I like that. And thirdly and lastly, what? It's going that quick? Well, I thought he was fixing to preach an hour. Nope, I never told you that. Matter of fact, the only reason the morning service was as long as it was is because we had to wait for the food. Let's sing about 3 more invitation verses. Praise God, they're going to get chicken. Thirdly, all things are made new. All things are made new. Revelation 21:5. And he that sat upon the throne said, Behold, I make all things new. And he said unto me, Write, for these words are true and faithful. See, the dead revive. The broken are mended. The lost are found. And balance is restored. When we come to the Lord, it's just that easy. You bring it before the Lord and great things happen because of all of the things that we just talked about. Now maybe you might be here and you need to be freed from something. I guarantee if you bring it before Him, it will lose its power. Whether you're afraid, whether you're worried or anxious or doubting, disobedient, bring it before Him and watch them lose their power over you. Don't sit back and think you could do it from there. Bring them to Him. We've talked about this before. I've often said, I just don't understand people that will sit in a service like this and have a dire need that they need to get a hold of God with, or they have a burden that they want God to do something about, and then they'll walk out the door. They'll never come to Him while He's here. They won't seek Him while He may be found or call on Him when He's near. They'll walk away and then act like they're going to do something about it later. Well, if you don't care here where God's at, why are you going to care out there? That is just absolutely senseless. It's senseless. When you could come and you could bring it before the Lord and you could take care of it, have Him deal with it right then and there, because He's here. I mean, if Jesus were here in the flesh and just said, Come to me and I'll heal you of anything that's wrong with you, then somebody just sits back and thinks, oh yeah, I really would like to have that. I really want Him to do that, but I'm not going to. I don't want people to think that I'm going forward for that. So they leave. But then they're praying and wanting Him to do something. Why would you walk away from where He is when He said, I'll help you now? Why would you do that? Why would you ignore His help and then act like, and then go around acting like you're all traumatized because of things that are going on when you wouldn't even come forward to even bring it before Him? That, to me, makes no sense. I don't understand why people would do that. But if you bring it before Him, it will lose its power. Like the 4 men who brought the lame man to Jesus, even broke open a roof to get him there. He saw their faith and did the miracle. Don't lose your miracle because you don't have faith enough to even bring it to Him. A lot of that whole "you have not because you ask not" is a real thing. But sometimes it matters how you're asking. Sometimes it matters why you're asking. If we're asking for things to consume it on our own lust, you can guarantee you're not going to get it. But if you're asking because you want to get closer to God, then that's definitely something to bring to Him. So we're going to give you an opportunity to do that. We're going to come and play verses of invitation.